I think one of the most important things that I learned to do really early on was be okay with not knowing.
As leaders and individuals, I think it's always thinking about what value can I offer this moment?
And then you're putting a gag on them, or you're forcing them to only share what mirrors what you're looking for. Again, it's ego.
Great careers aren't built in the big moments alone. They're built in everyday choices, bold little moves, and gutsy next steps. Welcome to Little Moves, Big Careers. Let's dive straight in. As you know, I always like to bring different voices, experience, and ideas to the show, and today is no exception. Zoe, welcome to Little Moves, Big Careers.
Thank you so much for having me.
Zoe spent 20 years in the police force in Avon and Somerset Police. Now, when I was a little kid, I really wanted to join the police. I'm a little bit jealous to hear Zoe's story. I can remember at 8 tugging on a policeman's jacket saying, I'm going to be a policeman when I grow up. But unfortunately, I never made it because my eyesight was poor. So Zoe, when did you first decide that you wanted to join the police? What was your journey to it?
Probably a similar age. So my parents were both police officers, and my mum's dad was also a police officer.
So it runs in the family.
Joked that genetically it was probably predetermined. Well, I don't think that's the thing. And my sister's been a primary school teacher for years, so maybe not in the DNA. But I knew I didn't want a 9 to 5. So I joined at 18. I was on the front desk, dealt with the public that were coming in, and we answered the old phone on the wire on the desk when it rang. 18 years old in a police uniform. So as far as the public were concerned, I was police officer, police staff. And dealing with the public. And I loved it right from day one, even though I was massively outside of my depth. I loved it. I loved the challenge, loved dealing with different people. I love the fact that you could look down the queue of people waiting to be seen and not know what any of them wanted. And that they would be right in front of you. You had to be really quick thinking, quick on your feet, which terrifies a lot of people, but I loved it.
Yeah, and each person would have come with a very different kind of problem for you, wouldn't it?
Different problem, and also different people needing to be dealt with slightly differently. So all of the things that I do now in terms of coaching and leadership and training around communication skills and building rapport and trust and mirroring and all, I had no idea about any of that stuff, but I learned how to do it from a very practical point of view first. And then years later, when I came into this world, I'd be reading something like, oh, I do that. I just didn't know it had a name to it. So yeah, it was great. Very steep learning curve, but absolutely loved it. And I totally understand why it would terrify a lot of people, but I loved every bit about it.
Yeah, nothing quite like learning on the job in that way. So being thrown into the deep end, you really do find that you sink or swim, and you clearly swam.
And it's one of, I mean, back then, I joined the year Google started. Yeah. So there wasn't, you couldn't Google the answer. You had to either find the almanac that had some of the answers and laws in there, or what we tended to do was wander around the police station until you found somebody who'd been around for a very long time and say, what do I do with this? So I loved the fact that you did have to think on your feet, you did have to problem solve, and all of that stuff I absolutely thrived in.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you said you wandered around, found somebody that had a bit more experience. Because of the conditions in which you were working, you had to build relationships. You had absolutely no choice. Whereas a lot of people now have a choice. We don't have to work with people if we don't want to. But I think that those skills are just so vital, aren't they? What were some of the things, if you were to have taken one or two key valuable points that you carried through all your career, what do you think there would have been, Zoe?
I think one of the most important things that I learned to do really early on was be okay with not knowing for that reason, and not try and bluff your way through it, because in that environment, it could have huge consequences.
Oh, gosh,
and
absolutely.
I would say that actually served me really well when I went into leadership. as well, of being okay with not knowing, being okay with not having all of the answers, and being okay that other people knew more.
Yeah.
And so just, walking around the station with a bit of paper and going, I've got someone in the office and this is what they're saying. What do I do? Because actually people love to be asked.
Mm.
They love to be able to show their experience and their, that credibility. And actually it does create that conversation and it does create that relationship. So I think that's definitely served me well, regardless of what role I was in. And even in senior leadership, being okay with having more junior members of staff who knew more. And I will stand by that. I think just that building that rapport and that relationship was really important. And when I first started, I worked a different shift pattern. So I worked with 5 teams that were on rotation.
Okay.
So I would have my own team, my own supervisor for the role that I was in, but I would also have a rotation of supervisors that I would work with. And so being able to be the trusted person across 5 different teams and have that relationship with them was really important. And again, I think that stands by everything too. The communication skill would probably be the third one. Being able to listen. And what I did learn, especially working with the public and in that kind of role, is listening to what's not being said as much as what is. And again, served me really well in leadership too. Holding the silences to let people speak, and also speak in a way that they needed to in that moment. So obviously can be a very high tense conversations, and people would swear and they drop the F-bomb. And if they felt anger, allow them to express that anger. If they were upset, give them that space to be upset. And I think I saw other people try and manage other people's emotions, and you saw people just shut down, and not just shut down what they were sharing, which for us from a disclosure point of view was really important, but they would shut down that trust and any rapport. And people would say, how do people you get so much out of people? And it's like, just give people the space to talk things through. So I think we underestimate the value of listening, and we underestimate the power of silence. And I think that, again, served really well.
This thing about being comfortable with not knowing, we're caught up in this treadmill, aren't we, of business and people valuing expertise, not just experience, expertise. And, we have perfectionist tendencies, and we'll only put our hand up if we know the right answer. Culturally, I actually think that is really, really hard. But if you can let go of it, it's amazing what you learn. It's amazing how it encourages you to think differently and solve problems in a much more robust way as well, isn't it?
I would be really interested to know whether or not you're picking up on this in your work as well. I think what I'm seeing is that there is a shift around leadership changing. So, if I think when I started in the late 90s, people that were in positions of leadership had experience. So you started at the bottom and you worked your way up to the top. And so with that came experience, and with that came credibility. And
culturally, you think about it, it was quite a parental relationship leadership wasn't it? It was a little bit parent-child. You kowtowed to them. They were the boss. And I think culturally that's changed.
That hierarchy was definitely there. And I do think there is a big shift in the better leaders are able to hold that space at an equal level and not rely on, I'm the boss and we've always done it this way and this is how it's going to be done, like that directional, transactional relationship. Those that have that flexibility and being able to sit and see their team as a team of experts who have their own experience, credibility, and expertise that can be drawn upon.
Yeah.
They still want you to make a decision and they still want you to lead, but it's much more collaborative.
It is much more collaborative. People are experts in lots of different things. And I think that leadership needs to be able to get over themselves, actually, and recognize that, because I think the leadership skills that are so vital now are fundamental skills like problem solving, critical thinking, the ability to bring teams together,
Mm-hmm.
and decision making. I mean, I think if I was to pinpoint one area that I really see people are finding difficult, it's actually making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because so much information is coming at you all the time. You kind of feel like, if I make this decision now, tomorrow, is it going to change? Is
Yeah.
something else? So having the confidence to make a decision, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is really, really important.
Yeah. I mean, I found through my experience, the departments that I worked in, quick decision making was key to success. You had to make decisions based on the information that you had, knowing that more information was going to keep coming through, and then you would make a different decision, and then more information, another decision again. So I
Exactly.
actually learned in my early years in the workplace that actually quick decisions help you to move things forward. And then as more information comes in, doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. It
Yeah.
just now means you need to make a different
It's like
decision to
stepping
keep your
stones, isn't it?
100%.
It's always I think as leaders and individuals, I think it's always thinking about, in this moment, what value can I offer this moment? And
Yes.
generally for leaders, it's about taking in that information and making a decision that provides a platform.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bit of firmity, isn't there? A
Yes.
platform that people can then go on to the next step and the
Yes.
next step and the next step. You don't need to be planning 5 years ahead. What's this organization and this team going to be
No.
looking at? Because no one knows.
Well, the world's moving too quickly now. We
Yeah.
can't have, well, we can have 5-year plans, 10-year plans. It's more a vision and a big picture rather than the level of detail that people would have done before. I mean, let's face it, we've got young people going into university that will come out and go into a job that doesn't currently exist.
Exactly.
The world is moving way too quickly for people to be thinking long term in detail. And we need direction, we need vision, sure. I'm certainly not disputing that. But actually, let's just decide the next step.
Yeah.
And then when we're on that step, then we can see what's in front of us, and then we can make another decision again. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how we place that weight on making the right decision first time rather than the best decision for now.
And I wonder, I was just thinking about what you said, I wonder how much ego comes into play, and if we could actually just get over ourselves, what amazing workplaces we'd have.
We see this time and time again, don't we? Of people's ego takes over. They need to be right. They need to know more. The need for drama. It's all there.
Yes.
And you do see
we
it
love a bit of
play
drama.
out. But actually doesn't help anybody at all. And I think it can undo credibility and reputation very, very quickly. And unfortunately, it's the people who display these behaviors don't often have the self-awareness to see the impact of those behaviors, and the responsibility gets placed elsewhere. But actually, self-awareness in leadership is huge.
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head, because if you've got that self-awareness, constantly scanning, aren't you? And you're working out, how am I helping? How am I contributing? What is my impact right now?
I just think it's a very heightened self-awareness for a lot of people. They'll label it as imposter syndrome because that's what it looks and sounds and feels like. But actually, it's just you have this self-awareness. So you're aware of perhaps where you want to develop. You are aware of perhaps not what isn't going as well as you would like it to. And you've got an aware of where you might have a knowledge gap, a skills gap, or an action gap. And that's okay, because that's part of growth, and that's part of now knowing what you want to work on. You just need to remember that doesn't mean that you're lacking in everything else. It's just you're here and you see where you need or what you need to improve on to get here. You know, I always say to people when they talk about imposter syndrome, okay, who do you know? Who have you worked with in the past who would have benefited from a little dash of imposter syndrome, because it's that self-awareness of actually none of us are perfect as leaders. Now, we've all got room for growth, and actually working with different people will identify your skills gap or your action gap, because every individual needs us to lead them differently.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that you're not a good leader. It just means that you are always looking to be a better leader. And that's a huge positive quality. Unfortunately, it feels uncomfortable. So it feels more of a negative.
We're very quick, aren't we, to label things? And it's
Yeah.
how do we then use that label? Is that label a positive driver, or is it holding us back?
Yeah.
And I think sadly sometimes as soon as people go, ooh, imposter syndrome, it could be a negative driver.
Yeah.
For me, I've always relabeled imposter syndrome as it's stepping out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a place of uncertainty. I don't know whether I'm going to succeed or not. But you know what? I know that I'm resourceful. I know that I'll give it my best shot. And what's the worst that can happen? The world isn't going to die as a result of my action in this moment right now.
Yeah.
Let's minimize the threat level where we can.
Yeah. That's great self-talk. The question that I get people to ask is, would other people feel like this in this situation? And if the answer is yes, then it's not imposter syndrome. It is simply something new, something different, something unfamiliar. And your brain is like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We don't know what we're going to do and how this is going to go. And so your fight, flight, and freeze kicks in. But if the chances are the person who you really respect that you work with would also feel like this in this situation, it's not imposter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, when you're doing investigations, you have no idea what's going to happen next. You've got absolutely no idea what you're going to uncover, whether it's going to lead to something, whether it's going to take you down a blind alley.
No? So you learn to let go of the outcome.
Yeah.
And that was the same in all of the roles. And in those first few years, you were like the triage. You decided where it needed to go. You passed it on to whoever next kind of picked up the baton, if you like, and carried it on. Yeah. Then I went into the control room, very fast paced, lots of calls coming in. And again, your role was to bring that information together so that somebody somewhere else would make that decision as to who was what resources went, how many resources went. Your role was to just ask as many questions and get as much relevant information as possible. And then from there, I went to the major crime team. So I was logistics manager for very experienced detectives and civilian staff investigating murders, homicides, serious incidents. And for them, it was more about actually take some time to gather the information before making a decision. Whereas I'd come from a department that was get a location, get some details of what's going on, and then make a decision, then get more information, make a decision, more information, make a decision. Whereas when I went to major crime, it was, ask better questions to get that information in, because actually what we do with every step is really important. Yeah. And there I had 3 managers who were very experienced, retired detectives who sat underneath me. They knew way more than I did. I'd never worked in that department, didn't have any of the answers, but I had
And how old were you at that point? Because that must have been quite
30.
difficult.
I was 30. So I was 30 at that point, and in a senior leadership role. So I didn't know anything about their investigations. That's not what they needed me for. They didn't need me to get involved in the work that they were doing. They needed me to be able to horizon scan, look at the bigger picture, look at the whole department, and make the decisions that would help make their job easier. That was all they wanted me to do. Actually, a lot of the time, I didn't know what they were working on. I didn't know status of investigation. I didn't need to know. Again, that's an ego element, isn't it? Well, I'm a senior leader here. I have the right to know. Actually, I don't. I'm not involved in the investigation. I don't need to know any of that. And actually, it would be white noise as such for the decisions that I needed to make. So again, was that element of be okay with that. You've got 3 managers that are doing their job very, very well. And that's what they're there to do, and what they need me to do is very different. But it was interesting, when you're 30 and you're managing people that have got more years of experience than you have years alive.
Yeah.
But I think that was the case for them as well. We had this period of time when I first got there where we needed to build up that trust and that rapport and that relationship. And I wasn't there to step on their toes, and they certainly didn't want to step on mine either. So
how did you
we
do
had
that, Zoe?
That's a very good question. I think back now, I don't know that there was. I don't know that there was something I particularly did. I think I just called it out, the elephant in the room, and said that I'm not a police officer. And I'm very aware that there's a lot of people here that don't like the fact that I'm not a police officer telling them what to do, because that's what they're used to. It was pretty new at that point. I also recognize that I'm female in a very largely male department at that time. I was the only female on the senior leadership team for quite some time.
Right.
And also the fact that I recognize that I am younger, and you've got children that are older than me, and you've got more years of service, and I massively respect that. And I don't want you to feel that I'm here to undermine that actually I think that's a huge strength, that what we all bring to the table when we all sit around the table is all very different. And that we can make that work. I did feel very strongly we could make it work. And I think they also wanted to make it work. But I think also all 3 of them were pretty great in not wanting the drama. They didn't want to get wrapped up in politics of the department, and they were more than happy to just leave it with me. And as soon as we got into that flow, it was great. And I would go to them and go, right, this is what I need, because I need this to do this. And they're like, cool. And that's what they gave to me. Sometimes I get an eye roll. I'm like, really? I'm like, it's what the bosses want. So it's what we're going to do. But if you can give me this, leave it with me and I will deal with it. And the more I could create that way of working so that they just did what they loved doing, and it took away any of that kind of extra nonsense, as they would call it, then we all worked really well together. I think humor is great. And I think one thing the police service does really well is have that space for humor and deal with things through humor. And they were great. They would take the mick. I would take the mick. And sometimes those more difficult conversations would come with a little joke, or, a little joke to just break the tension a little bit. And that definitely helped build the trust and rapport as well. And I think once we got past the point where I could take a joke and they could be themselves with me, then we were off and running. They were great guys to work with.
Yeah. I mean, you've said a couple of things there that I think are really important. For me, the first one is just name the elephant in the room. So often, and this comes back to what we were talking about earlier, what makes a great leader. So often we know that they know that they know. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? And nobody will talk about it. Nobody will be the first to mention what's going on, why it's going on, or what's happening even. And so everybody then starts making assumptions about it, and that builds the drama that we talked about as well, doesn't it?
Saying it out loud brings it into the room, and also then you can come up with solutions for the actual problem, not the problem that you perceive or what you assume is the problem. Okay, let's not talking about it doesn't make it not exist. Shine a light on it. Let's plonk it on the table and go, right, what are we going to do about it? And as a team, collectively, how do we all take a responsibility for dealing with this messy stuff that is now dumped in the middle of the table? Who can take what? Who's going to deal with what? And how are we all going to show up and resolve it?
That brings me to the second point that I think you've raised, really, which is leaders are there to clear the way.
100%.
If you focus on that, what is it that you need to do to make your team's pathway as smooth as possible? That makes a brilliant leader.
And can we just clarify, this is clear the way, not get in the way.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of people out there who think that it's getting in the way, and it's not. It's there to look ahead, see what's coming up, but also feed in from their teams. What do you see as coming up on the horizon that I can tackle ahead? It's that fire prevention rather than firefighting. And if I'm not here to get in your way, I'm not here to interfere with the job that you're doing, I'm here to clear the way so that you can do your job more efficiently, more effectively, and in a way that means that you're working at that high performance, which is what we all want. And if we can all have a little bit of fun with it, then it's just the icing on the cake. Because why not? We're in there for a long time. Like, can we at least try and enjoy the process of what we're all here to do? Because it
sounds so easy, doesn't it? And again, you know what, Sky, I've got this, I'm a very visual person. So like in my head, I've just got this alarm going, ego, 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 because we talked about it earlier. I just think that all of those things you talked about are relatively simple things to make happen.
But they can't be done if you're led by ego. They can't. You just can't, because it would require you to stand there and say, okay, I want to hear what you've got to say, and I'm going to let go what I want to say first. And I actually commented on a LinkedIn post this morning. Somebody had put a great post up about, an open door. Saying you have an open door policy doesn't mean that you've created psychological safety. And my comment, which I was quite pleased with actually at very early hours of this morning, was actually an open door doesn't necessarily mean an open mind. And that's the challenge, is quite often people say, I've got an open door, I want to hear what you want to say, I want you to be more involved. And then the minute they walk in through that door, they get shut down. And they're going to think twice before they walk through that door again, which means then you can employ the best possible people in all of those roles, and then you're putting a gag on them, or you're forcing them to only share what mirrors what you're looking for. Again, it's ego.
So, Zoe, what makes a good leader?
It is how you show up and how you engage, because leadership is about getting the best out of your people. And if you don't create that space for them, you don't encourage it, you don't empower it, it's not going to happen. I think historically, a leader would have done the job and then worked their way up. I think the best leaders, they showed those leadership behavior skills from the beginning, and they've worked on shaping them, evolving them, growing them. And so they really could lead any team in any environment, in any industry, because it's, again, if you let go of the need to know, doesn't matter what department or company you are with, you're still going to bring out the best in people, and you're still going to create that space where people want to do their best, perform at a high level, and reach that potential, whatever that potential is. One leader can make it or break it.
Back to your career, Zoe. You were the logistics manager for major serious crimes. How long did you do that for?
I was there for a couple of years before I was seconded up to a program team to work on reshaping the operating model of the force because of the budget cuts that were coming. We had gone through, I think, 3 rounds of the comprehensive spending review at that point, and we had to make some changes to the way the force operated to be able to bring in the rest of the budget cuts. And I was seconded up to headquarters for 6 months. It's never 6 months, is it?
No.
And I was there for a couple of years. And then there were a couple of opportunities that came up as a result of some of those changes, and ended up moving into the business change manager role, which I loved, because we were implementing body-worn cameras, laptops, mobile devices, the policing app. So really modernizing the policing world. It was a great role to have, because you were managing the stakeholders as well as the internally and externally, and having lots of conversations.
Yeah, and it occurs to me that actually, particularly that first role that you talked about, thinking about how you implement those budget cuts, that is a really difficult role, because fundamentally people would be losing their jobs or changing the way that they work. You must have faced some really difficult situations then.
Yeah, we had, and again, talking about calling out the elephant in the room and just being able to sit in the discomfort of those conversations. And again, I
Mm.
think a huge leadership skill is being able to sit there and allow somebody to express themselves quite freely and get out in the open how they feel, what they think, what they feel,
Yeah.
what it is that they want, and give them that space to be able to do that without any repercussion. I think is a
Yes.
great leadership skill. So actually sitting in rooms with, police officers, police staff, very legitimate concerns, very legitimate worries, but actually giving them that space to get annoyed, to swear a little bit if they needed to have a good old rant and a rave, and help them to feel heard. And that was my role, was to sit between the business and the program and project teams, and just going back and forth and being the go between and having lots of difficult conversations. And not an easy job, but again, a job that would, for a lot of people, be their worst nightmare. For me, I loved I think it kind of makes sense really that I've gone into coaching, of sitting and listening and
Yeah, I mean,
giving
you
that
talked about
space.
helping people be heard, didn't
Yeah.
you? And what was really interesting in that is that you actually said without repercussions.
Mm,
I think in today's business world, we often feel that we're going to be judged if we say something that is dissenting or different or ill thought out.
mhm,
So we hold back from speaking because we feel that we're going to be judged. And actually, it's those dissenting voices, the different voices, the ill-judged thoughts or ill-thought-out thoughts that are often really pivotal to making a really good change. So we do, going back to what you said right at the very start, we all need to be prepared to just kind of be a bit more patient with
mhm.
people, don't we? And give them that space without any kind of judgment to explore their thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. And it's not fact. I think that's where a lot of people get it all kind of muddled up, is that they're not challenging you. They're not
Yeah,
saying that you are wrong, because this isn't a right or wrong thing. What they're offering up is a different perspective and a
yeah,
different viewpoint. And actually just taking a moment to let go of what you believe is true, which
yeah.
isn't necessarily true, it's just your version of the truth, and actually just allowing somebody else to share their perspective and how and why they have that perspective, is only going to open your eyes that little bit wider and help
Mm,
you to make better decisions. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it.
of course.
So by going around the room and say, okay, what are your thoughts? What do you
Mm,
agree with? What have we missed? What have we not seen? What are your concerns? You get that full perspective,
yeah,
or at least a lot more than if you're only thinking about what you think about. And
yeah,
again, comes back to ego, doesn't it?
absolutely. So, at what point did you decide to leave the
When
police force?
well, it wasn't my decision, as they made the role redundant. So
Right.
unfortunately,
Which often happens if you're in a business change role.
I wasn't expecting it. And actually, by the time it all went through, it was bang on the nose of my 20 years service.
Really?
So, yeah, literally, I think the 20 years fell on the Friday. My redundancy was the Monday, August the 1st. And so I actually launched the business officially on August the 1st, so that I had the old and the new chapters on the same day,
Interesting.
rather
So
than trying to do
that's
it.
really quick, Zoe. So is it something that you've been thinking about for a while, or was it just something like, right, if that chapter's finished, this is what I'm going to do now?
No, I moved on that very quickly. So I did have, in for full transparency, I had a secondary role as a self-development trainer that I was doing. Is it public sector? If they can get you to do more than one job, then absolutely they will. So I had a secondary role as a self-development trainer. I was coaching and mentoring, because female senior leader,
Yeah.
police staff, managing police officers, there were other people coming up through that I was supporting. So I didn't have any clients. I didn't have any work lined up. I wasn't, I was still doing some training on the side and kind of playing about with it. So I did have an idea, and I did know that that was kind of what I wanted to go into. But it was more of a 5-year plan than 12 weeks. So when the news came, it was rough because I wasn't expecting it. So it was pretty brutal. And again, leadership, it was more one individual and how it was managed as opposed to the organization. And I found it really tough because it was 20 years. I didn't know anything else. And given the options on the table were pick out all the bits that you love doing, start a business, see how that goes, or look for recruitment elsewhere. And weirdly, the business was the less scarier options of the two. I guess I knew more, talking about comfort zone and what was familiar. I knew that if I'd started the business, I could control and influence what I did. Whereas if I went to work for another organization, I wouldn't necessarily have that control and influence. So launched the business in August and just said to the people around me, right, August, give me till Christmas. Don't let me need you. Let me just give it 100% till Christmas, and then we'll review it at Christmas and see what's going on. Never look back.
Yeah. And how long ago was
Never even considered it. And so it'll be 9 years in August this year.
Brilliant.
Best thing ever. Hated the process, but actually the outcome, best thing ever.
Zoe, listen, thank you so much. We've covered some really interesting topics today, and it very naturally led into the role of leadership, which is your absolute specialism right now.
Small shifts, sharp impact. These are quick-fire career moves, real things you can do before your next coffee refill.
Before we go, can I ask you if you were to offer words of wisdom to your younger self or to people coming up through the ranks in today's world of careers, what would be those nuggets of wisdom you would like to share?
I think we've talked about ego a lot today.
Yeah.
I think that's come up in various conversations all the way through. I think just it is being open to learning from other people. I mean, one of my values is continuous improvement, and I think for me has a huge emphasis on always being open to learning. And it's not, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was not a fan of school at all. That formal learning, not a fan of. And even when I did my coaching accreditation, the thought of having to go through a structured learning process was not fun for me. But I love learning from other people. I love sitting in a room and going, oh, I want to know more. I want to learn from you. And I think that, again, it's just let go. You don't need to know everything.
Yeah.
You will be a much better leader for listening and learning than you will for trying to bluff that you know it all.
Yeah. Love that. And while you were talking as well, I was just thinking, well, I'll put a link in the show notes to, there's a free values assessment, which I think is always really interesting for people to do. So I'll link to that as well as your website. Yeah, and obviously, if you would like to talk to myself or Zoe, then details will be on the show notes for you. But Zoe, thank you so much. It's been a really interesting conversation today. We hadn't planned to talk about any of the things that we talked about at all. And I just think that when conversations flow, often really interesting things come up. And I think this thing about ego and understanding how limiting it is when actually you think it's a thing that is releasing and giving you strength, it's actually incredibly limiting to you and those people around you. So being able to let go of that ego and open yourself up to the wonders that may possibly be, you never quite know. That switch is such a key one for anyone going into leadership.
Yeah, 100%.
So Zoe, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Thank you.
So as we wrap up today's session, I keep coming back to something Zoe said. The leadership isn't about knowing more. it's actually about clearing the way. And if I'm honest, I think that's actually quite harder than it sounds. Because clearing the way means letting go of your ego. It means being okay with not having the answer. And it means trusting other people and trusting yourself enough not to have to control everything. So I want to leave you with a couple of questions today, not for you to answer right now, just to sit with them and notice what you notice. So whether you're a leader or not, where in your work right now are you holding on to the need to be right? When do you think you could be more curious instead? And what value would that offer you? Where do you think you might be adding friction? Not because you mean to, but because it feels safer to stay in control. And if you're leading others, what would change if your job wasn't to have all the answers, but to make it easier for others to do their best work? You don't need to overhaul anything. Just notice one moment this week where you could perhaps listen a little bit longer, ask maybe just one better question, or step back instead of stepping in. That's often where the real shift happens. As ever, I'll pop links to Zoe's work and the values exercise we mentioned in the show notes, and you can always contact me, Caroline, at inspireyourgenius.com. If this episode stirred something, sit with it for a bit. You don't need to rush to fix it. And as always, remember, make your move, even if it's tiny, especially if it's tiny. Until next week.